Welcome to SaharaTV. With us today is a lawyer and a human rights activist, Barrister Festus Ogun. It's a pleasure having you on SaharaTV, Barrister.
It's a pleasure being on your show. Thank you very much for having me.
The allegations against Abba Kyari, the suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police, took a startling dimension recently when the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency declared him wanted for alleged drug dealing. Femi Babalola, the spokesperson of the NDLEA, in a press briefing said the anti-drug agency strongly believes that DCP Kyari is a member of a drug cartel that operates the Brazil, Ethiopia, Nigeria illicit drug line. Barrister Festus Ogun, what's your reaction to this recent startling revelation?
It's indeed deeply worrisome. It's quite shameful and disgraceful, and it's a strong indictment on our policing system in this country. For me, I find it deeply disturbing that a celebrated police officer, the Super Corps, whom the National Assembly even stood up in celebration for, can be found in this kind of mess. It is indeed shameful and deeply worrying. And that is why we really need to interrogate our system at this juncture. Because if the best amongst us, if the celebrated amongst us are still found in controversial situations like this, are still emerge in scandals like this, then we are in for a serious struggle as a country.
Now, some Nigerian...
Are we saying the best amongst us are still rogues? This is the question I've been asking myself since the revelation came into public space. Are the best amongst us still rogues? So we really need to interrogate the system, the kind of system we operate in this country. If a Super Corps, a celebrated police officer, who is celebrated far, near and wide for his gallantry, can be, found in this kind of disturbing and disgraceful scandal. If this same police officer can be found in cases relating to, fraud and gross human rights violations, yet is the man we've been celebrating, what then happens to those ones that are not celebrated? So it seems that our tragedy is quite complex, and that is to tell you that even the best amongst those we've been celebrating are not the ideal kind of individuals who should be found near the seat of power. We need to interrogate the system, and we have to do something very radical and urgent about our situation in this country.
Now, some Nigerians have alleged that the NDLEA's allegation against Kyari is a play by the federal government to truncate his extradition. I'd like to get your perspective on this. Did DCP Kyari breach any extraditable offense? What does the law say about extradition in the light of the litany of allegations against Kyari?
Well, I would not share the view that the arrest of Kyari in relation to the drug allegation is a planned attempt by the federal government to exonerate or to ensure that Abba Kyari do not get extradited. Because you would see that the video evidence that we have in public circulation is really telling and revealing. It was indeed an intentional move by the suspended police officer to commercialize what should ordinarily be an avenue for us to cleanse our country of drug abuse. But he has abused his office as a police officer. Not just that, he has crossed the sacred line of professionalism and decency with the evidence in public domain. So I do not think it was an orchestrated plan by the federal government of this country. That does not necessarily mean I trust them, but I just have that feeling that no, this is not an orchestrated plan. However, the coincidence is, by virtue of our law, very helpful to the case of the extradition of Abba Kyari. Section 3, subsection 6, A and B of the extradition law of 1966 clearly provides that where a fugitive who is to be extradited has a pending criminal proceeding against him, unless and until the criminal proceeding is completed, where his guilt will be determined, whether he's guilty or otherwise, until the completion of a criminal trial against a fugitive who is about to be extradited. An extradition application will not be accepted, will be rejected. So, if Abba Kyari is charged to court by the NDLEA, it means that any extradition application cannot be immediately made in respect of Abba Kyari's case in the United States. That does not necessarily mean that he would not be extradited at the end of the day, but that trial has to be completed. If he is found guilty, his jail term has to be completed. And you know what happens in our system. Even if the court declares that he is guilty, Abba Kyari is going to fight his way up to the Supreme Court. If the court declares that he is not guilty, the NDLEA is likely to fight it up to the Supreme Court, and we know how our justice system is.
Exactly.
We know the slow pace of justice administration in this country. What we are talking about now can take over 10 years before the matter gets finally determined. And we know that justice delayed, most often than not, is justice denied. However, in all of this, like I stated in my press statement, the federal government of Nigeria, through the office of the Attorney General, can do a lot. Why the NDLEA can go ahead to prosecute him after their thorough investigation, which will invariably hinder his extradition. Once the federal government is ready to proceed with the extradition of Abba Kyari, the Attorney General of the Federation can exercise his power to discontinue the case he has, the case Abba Kyari has with the NDLEA. The Attorney General of the Federation has a constitutional power to discontinue any criminal proceedings against anybody or person in this country. So, if indeed the federal government is committed to ensuring that it gets extradited, then even when the NDLEA proceeding is ongoing, and the federal government maybe takes the extradition as a priority, then the Attorney General of the Federation has the inherent power, right, and authority under our Constitution to discontinue the case, the criminal proceeding with the NDLEA, and continue with the extradition. Then the extradition proceeding will be successful. But where there is a pending criminal proceeding in court against Abba Kyari, who is to be extradited, then no extradition can stand. No extradition application can stand the test of, of, of law. Because, like I said, the Extradition Act made it abundantly clear that where there is a pending criminal proceeding, not civil, criminal proceeding against a fugitive who is to be extradited, then unless and until the criminal proceeding is determined, discontinued, or where he has been discharged and acquitted, then the extradition application can be successful. But where the criminal proceeding is ongoing, or where he has been declared guilty, sentenced accordingly, then the extradition application might not be successful. But we are not saying that, look, the move or the case with NDLEA will automatically hinder. No, that is not the point we are making. We are saying that in the light of law and the circumstances of this case, there is likelihood that the case is going to hinder his extradition or his impending extradition to the United States of America. That is what we are saying.
Now, finally, earlier on you talked about the need for us to interrogate the system. How has this Abba Kyari's case, how has it affected Nigeria's global reputation on corruption, misgovernance, and fragile institution?
It has indeed exposed us yet again that our country is, especially our country leadership, is not sincere in its fight against corruption, that those who should be upholding the law, are the very set of people who are breaking the law with impunity. And that is the situation we find ourselves. You will discover that despite the suspension of Abba Kyari, he still had significant control over the intelligence unit of the Nigerian police force. And that was why we see in the reports of the NDLEA, he was still mobilizing, he was still giving instructions to the officers in that unit. What does that tell us? It tells us that the institution that we operate are too weak and incapable of ensuring that our country moves forward as fast as it should. It is a scandal on the Nigerian police force. The Inspector General of Police asked questions to answer as to how a suspended officer still had significant control over his unit before his suspension in the police. Because that bothers me a lot. It gives a lot of questions as to the sincerity and intentionality of even the Nigerian police force about the suspension. Could it be that the suspension is all about the media? Was it a media suspension? Was it that it was suspended in the media and the real sense of it was still working? It gives us a lot of worry as citizens of this country that we just have a set of individuals in the position of authority who are not committed to the true business of promoting the peace and advancement of our country. The Abba Kyari's case, to sound very mildly, has exposed our country to ridicule and untold shame. Because when our best, whom we celebrated, is still a rogue, so what is the fate of our country in the real sense of it? We need to sanitize our system as fast as we can so that we can move forward as a country. And nothing significant can be done unless and until the current system we operate is broken down totally, and we should build a new system. This system, especially our Nigerian police force, is broken beyond repair, is broken beyond reform. We need a new system to move forward as a country. By the way, why should we call our Nigerian police a force? The Nigerian police should be a service to the people. It shouldn't be the Nigerian police force. It should be the Nigerian police service. And that is why you see that they inflict force, they inflict pain, agony, torture, and undue hardship on the suffering people of this country. We need to change the system completely. I am not talking about reform. I'm talking about a radical change of our policing structure. The Abba Kyari system has exposed the system itself. It has exposed that, look, those set of individuals that we claim are our best are still part and parcel of the rotten system. It is a shame, but it is the reality of all of us that unless and until something is done radically to the policing system in this country, then we still have quite a number of Abba Kyaris. And we must not blame him too. He's just been a loyal servant of the system. He's a loyal servant of the system, and that is why I continue to say that, look, Abba Kyari is still a super core, regardless of how you see it. He still maintains his position as a super core because he is a true reflection of what the Nigerian police force is. He's one of their best, and you can see that he is a true reflection of whom a typical Nigerian police officer is, regardless of his rank, regardless of his position. What Abba Kyari is today is just a true reflection of what the Nigerian police force and what an average Nigerian police officer is. And that is why it will be very hard for him to get into the nets, because he's just been a loyal servant of the Nigerian system.
Now, let me also, before we conclude, talking about radical reforms, and some are of the opinion that at this point in time, the president should take sweeping, decisive action, including sacking complicit senior police officers or senior officials, overhauling the police system, just like you have also suggested, as well as the office of the Attorney General of the Federation. What's your view with regards to this?
I do not believe we need a reform. I stated that earlier. I do not believe we need a reform. We'll be making reforms. Even after the historical NSAS protest, there were conversations around reform. But what have we got to show for it? We still have hundreds of Abba Kyari in the system. So how do you reform the system when a so-called celebrated corps, who is a microcosm of the whole force itself, can be found in this shameful scandal, can be found wanting? Someone who has the prospect of becoming the Inspector General of Police. We do not need that kind of policing system. We do not need that kind of police force. We do not need a force. We want a police service whose interest aligns with the provision of Section 14(2)(b) of the Constitution, the security of the people, the welfare of the people. But what do we have today? We still continue to have conversation around reform. They told us they've scrapped SARS. How about the officers, the rogues that were operating under the SARS unit? Where are they? Are they out of the police force? As a human rights lawyer whose work revolves around issues of police brutality, extrajudicial killing, and human rights violation, I can tell you that I get reports of human rights violation almost on a daily basis. We have cases against them, a lot of cases against them. We still have gross cases of human rights violation. Some are fatal indeed. Then we are still talking about reform. Enough of conversations around editorial reforms. Enough of conversations around reforms on pages of newspaper. Enough of conversations around reform on television and in press statements. We need a true change in the system. You cannot have a true policing system or a true policing structure with the kind of system that we operate. The system must be completely broken down if we want to move forward as a people. What we have now is a criminal organization that is not committed to securing the people. Rather, it is committed to ride roguishly on the fundamental and sacred rights of our people, which is intolerable. is unacceptable. And that is why we have been consistent in saying that if we really want a change in the system, then we must ensure that the current system that we operate is completely broken down first. Then we can now have a completely new system, a brand new system that is not built on impunity, that is not built on lies, that is not built on tribalism and ethnicity, that is built on truth, that is built on justice, that is built on peace and fairness. These demands are simple, but it seems the leadership of our country, because they benefit largely from the rogue nature and the criminality of the Nigerian police system, are not committed to ensuring that our demands are completely met. But in the fullness of time, the people of this country will rise in unison to demand for life. Because what the Nigerian police force is doing currently is, entrenching poverty, punishing innocent people, violating human rights with reckless abandon, and no one is meant to answer questions. What the Nigerian people are asking is a Nigerian police force, or a Nigerian police service rather, that will make them live. Because Nigeria cannot even longer say comfortably that they have the right to life, that they can live. When an average policeman has the license to kill with reckless abandon and without consequences, we need to change the system and not reform the system.
Barrister Festus Ogun, thank you so much for your insightful and enlightening perspective.
It's really a pleasure joining you.
Barrister Festus Ogun is a Nigerian lawyer, a human rights activist, a social crusader, columnist, and public affairs analyst. Thank you once again for joining us on SaharaTV this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.